Vinny, how you doing, man?
Doing good, brother. What you got going on tonight?
Just another Monday, done with work, finished a little dinner, enjoying a beer, and, gonna shoot the shit with you.
Heck yeah.
How about you?
Now we're about in the same boat. Just got home from work, got dinner on the stove, waiting for the kids to get back from karate and getting ready to eat.
Yeah. So you're down in Georgia. Are you guys locked up down there, or is it wide open? Or
Wide open.
Must be nice.
Yeah, like my life literally never even changed. I mean, there was they said 6 weeks to flatten the curve or whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
So we shut down the showroom at the shop, and it was drop off, key box only, sanitize everything, try to make sense of science or whatever. And then we watched the world literally implode on itself as the morons started to come out of the woodwork, and we were just like, this is a joke. And the whole state opened back up, and it's been normal ever since.
Right.
I mean, you run into little pockets of weirdos here and there, but the state as a whole has been pretty normal.
Well, what's weird up here is everything behind the scenes here is relatively normal, but in the public view, everybody has a mask on. But if you walk into a business that's not like Walmart, it's just a smaller business. You walk in and everybody kind of has their mask in their hand, like, do I need this shit in here? And everybody's like, no.
Right.
It's like, I don't know of one place that they're like, yeah, you need to put that on. Everybody's pretty chill around here, but then it goes back to, I just saw tonight and it really frustrates me. A local fellow passed away of, he has COVID or complications of it. And of course, that sucks when anybody dies, but then it turns into this big cry that people that weren't wearing their masks, caused all this and all that shit.
Right.
It's sad.
It really is. And I don't get to experience it in real life like that. I just see it on social media. So, I mean, aside from my absolute must-dos at work with social media, man, I'm just like checked off. Like there's so much hate and division, and
it's insanity.
It's insanity. Like, we're allowing these puppet string players to play with us, and I just refuse to be a part of that. I'm not going to be played.
Well, what's crazy is it's hard to believe that the mask thing could be such a left and right. Like, you can almost pick out a person's politics by watching them walk into a store. And
literally,
you shouldn't be able to do that, but somehow this mask thing has turned into that. Like, instantly when you see him, you're like, "Oh, okay, I know that guy. Like, I know what he's about."
Well, and it's like the funniest part, and you're absolutely right. And the funniest part of what you just pointed out to me is the ones that are like the never Trumpers. They're the ones with the stupidest masks that could never medically account to anything. Like, it's an old Bob Dylan t-shirt where they just cut the logo out and tried to embroider. Like, it's a fashion statement as they're saying, I'll do whatever you want, almighty master. And then there's the people that are just kind of like, I'm just doing this because I have to. They got the little blue surgical mask. And then there's the ones that are like, all right, if I have to wear this piece of crap, I'm going to make a political statement that says Trump 2020 on it or something like that. Like, it's really funny to see how everybody does it different. But the people that are going to mask shame you the hardest are the ones with the dumbest mask. It's like, that's an old rotten t-shirt, bud. There's more bacteria in that some bitch than floating around in the air outside of it.
And they're always the least healthy looking people too.
Yeah, they're all pasty. They got yellow, brown liver spots in their eyes. Their skin's just turned a tallow color.
Oh, yeah. This is crazy. Yeah, I'm kind of sick of it.
Sexy old us just being normal. Like,
drives me nuts. So why don't you tell everybody what you do? Give them a little. Well, actually, you got kind of an interesting story. So you started out all the way up. Was it up Washington State, up that way?
Started out in Montana.
Montana, okay.
My diesel career started at a timber frame home company in Montana that I started working for when I was 15. Never had an interest in diesels. I always liked the way they sounded. I liked the way they smelled in the morning when you're at the gas station when you're 5 years old. Grandpa's filling up the old jalopy and a 7.3 OBS pulls up and you're just like, man, Like if Jesus farted, that's what
Yeah.
his farts smell like. That's magical. So I kind of grew up loving the smell of the old 6.5s and the old 7.3s and stuff. But my real diesel career, the seed was planted. I was 16 years old, and we had a dumbass helper laborer on this log crew. And basically, this guy had 2.5 brain cells bounce around between his ears, and they'd collide every now and then, and a cognitive thought would come out as half a sentence. And he was just worthless. And so we just gave him little jobs. You know, fill up the chainsaws with bar oil, make sure they're all full. We're never going to use them, but just make sure they're full.
Right,
Look, he's not looking. Quick, dump them all out. And so we told him to fill up all the forklifts. We had these brand spanking new Caterpillar TH83 telehandlers that we just bought a fleet of. If there's an awkward pause and it sounds like there's a cock in my mouth, I'm smoking a cigar.
Enjoy, sir.
So this idiot goes to fill up these tractors with diesel fuel one morning, and he fills every single one of these brand new $160,000 machines up with gasoline.
Oh, man.
And not just any old gasoline. This is like, there's a 500-gallon drum of diesel fuel and like a 50-gallon drum standing next to it of pre-mixed saw gas.
Oh.
And so there was just enough oil content. You know, this was 2001. So these were, you know, John Deere. They were basically 4BT Cummins motors, but they were made by John Deere with a little mechanical inline pump. Right. So they, you know, a mixture of used engine oil and dog poop. They'd run, you know, they'd get through it. Maybe a filter change afterwards, but that much gas, it was just enough to destroy the motors. And so it was going to be months before they could get an on-site mechanic. You know, we're out in the middle of BFE, Montana. And for Caterpillar to send somebody out there to redo that many engines was just kind of unheard of, but they would make an exception because we had a pretty decent fleet of machines. And so the owner was pretty frustrated. He was like, look, I'm just going to buy 4 new crate engines and we'll stuff them in there. Well, we could only get 3, and I volunteered to do the job. There wasn't a diesel mechanic around. You know, this is the Bitterroot Valley, Montana. You know, there was guys that worked on diesel pickup trucks, but nobody that was going to come out on site at that time and put an engine in these tractors for us. And so I volunteered for the job. I got the books and figured it out, got these things back running, and we could only get 3 engines, so I volunteered to tear the 4th one down, basically study its insides, and figure out how to make it run again. And we got them running, and I was kind of like the hero. And after that, it was just kind of, I was the diesel guy at the log yard. Mm-hmm. And then I was the diesel guy at the local high school. You know, Johnny would get dad's old 7.3 hand-me-down. We'd buy a Diablo Sport Puck and an AFE intake and slam it on in the parking lot. And so that's really where it started. It didn't really take off until I started my own timber framing company in Idaho. Years later, I was 20 years old and I started my company, and naturally I had a fleet of diesel trucks. I had diesel tractors, diesel generators, diesel scissor lifts, everything ran on diesel. And I was just getting raped by these guys. You know, they did have mobile mechanics then. And, you know, we were in a bigger city. We weren't so secluded. And, you know, but these guys are charging $95 an hour. And I was making $100 an hour as this artisan timber framer guy that had all this engineering information, and like, I got some greasy old wrench. I'm paying him $95 an hour. I'm like, this is stupid. And so I just kind of started segueing into fixing all my own crap. And the next thing you know, there's 2 or 3 buddies' trucks in your driveway. Mm-hmm. And it just snowballed from there. And then a very good friend of mine, just an acquaintance at the time, but we ended up being really good friends. He was working for, it was a company kind of like FedEx, but not as big. They only run up and down the West Coast, kind of I-5 corridor up and down there through California, Oregon, Washington. And it was owned by a bunch of Russians, if I remember right. And they basically had a bunch of 24 valves with box truck backs on them. And he was just replacing turbos and injectors like crazy on these things. They'd run them hot. He'd put EGT gauges in. They wouldn't look at them. Like, you know, they just have some Neanderthal running these things. And no matter what we did or he did to try and keep these things alive, they would just destroy them. And so he started getting into the diesel performance. He was a huge Shides follower. He and his buddy would go out to Shides every year and just drool over these 1,000 horsepower motors. And back then it was all 12 valve stuff,
Uh-huh.
and 24 valves are just starting to break the surface. And so I saw this guy, like his passion for performance, and I was making really good money at the time. And, I was just like, let's go rent a shop. Like, let's get you out of here. Let's get you doing what you're good at. And
Mm-hmm.
I just started throwing money. I had a '03 5.9 Cummins that was brand new. The common rail stuff really hadn't taken off. And so I was like, let's just make this our toy. Let's just, you tell me what I need to buy. I'll buy it. We'll throw it on in the barn behind the house. We'll get this. You get people talking about this thing. This was all pre-social media.
Mm-hmm.
This was Cummins Forum Comp D days.
The good old days.
And the good old days, man. Like where people would call each other out and they would actually meet up and fist fight.
Yeah.
or at least throw a crock at you while you're at a drag race. And so we did it. He started out in his barn, and I was just kind of funneling money in there that I didn't know what to do with, spend money on my truck, overpay him on the labor. I ended up wrapping my truck, him and his buddy. It was Chris and Nick's Diesel Performance, CN Diesel Performance. And Chris kind of got a job opportunity to go work with the Forest Service, our company that contracted the Forest Service, and they were working on like big water pumps for fighting forest fires.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of, we came up with the company name, and the next week he disappeared and never came back. And so it remained CN Diesel Performance, but we didn't have a logo. We didn't have nothing. And so I dabble in art. And so I airbrushed this huge skull with a pirate's bandana and big gold hoop earrings and this flag coming back, and it said CN Diesel in chrome letters in the bandana. And then we had like the skull and crossbones, but the crossbones turned into pistons and rods at the top. And so I got that slathered all down both sides of my truck, and we hit every sled pull on the West Coast. We were driving 13 hours to hit a drag race in Northern California. We were like carnies, like dirty old dingy hippies. Like we were just get off work Friday night and haul ass, drive all night. 3 of us packed in the truck to get to an event, show up the next day, sleep in the parking lot till 6 when things started. It was so much fun. It was so raw. It was so real. And that's where I met Lenny Reed. He was rebuilding turbos on his pulling truck in the back of a trailer. And I'm just like nerdy ass 22-year-old kid asking him every question under the sun. We're still friends today. I mean, it's just crazy how many what I consider veterans and greats in this business that I met. And I was just some dumb 22-year-old kid slinging tuners and intakes and exhaust in my driveway. And so it was, I miss it. I miss that part of it. I miss the innocence of it. Back we were all figuring it out back then. Nobody was an expert,
And there was a strange enthusiasm too that I don't have it anymore. It went away. Maybe it's a young man's game. I don't know what it is, but
no, it's just the economy. Back then we were. I mean, man, I was making good money. I was taking home $400,000 a year back then, doing $9 million a year worth of timber framing, and we were hiding it all from the tax man, buying tools and this and that. So. Even when I felt like I had plenty of money to build play trucks, I still couldn't do it because I couldn't write it off. I could write some of it off as repair.
Right.
But I was literally slinging side jobs for cash. I mean, I was a hooker, man. I mean, I was building decks on Granny's house, like a $500 deck to buy my turbo.
Right.
And, now it's every single kid's got a black Platinum American Express, and it's 1,000 horsepower isn't cool anymore. Everybody can do it.
Well, and it's 1,000 horsepower is oddly achievable and still oddly unreliable. So you've learned your lessons that like you can do it, but it just never ends, And then you have to
so much crap.
everything got broke.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Brady from Industrial calling me one night, and he sold me these injectors. And I get them, and I put them in my driveway. It's snowing. I get the truck running. I can't wait to go beat the dog out of this thing. And I get on the interstate, and about the time I grab fifth gear, It was an MV 5600 back
Yeah.
then. And I grabbed fifth gear and it's like running up on the RPM. I'm just killing this little 62 millimeter fat shaft that I had in there at the time. And I just threw these 150s in it with a stock CP3 and it's like, I'm like, that can't be good. Oh Lord, what was that? We just broke something. We literally were figuring out what rail pop was together. And so I'm calling Brady and he's like, well, let me throw those sticks in my 04. And he did it. And he's like, and obviously he had way better data logging equipment than me.
Right.
And so he's like, yeah, it's rail pop. You're draining the rail, man. He's like, I'm going to send you a second CP3. I didn't even know what that meant. I'd never heard that sentence before. And, we were just snowballing parts into these things. And so then I finally get the rail pop to go away and my EGTs on the top and are through the roof because that little 62 couldn't move any more air. And Brady, he was like compounds.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, no, man, like I just want to do this with a single. I don't know why. It's just something I want to do. And he's like, well, I got this big ass 66 millimeter piece of crap on my truck and I can't keep it spooled. And he had an auto at the time and I was manual. He's like, I think it'll work. So he sent me that thing and it sucked balls. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I had to completely relearn how to drive my truck.
Uh-huh.
And we literally installed it on a Friday night before. I don't even know if you know of it. There was a big event up in Redding, California back in the day.
Oh,
J&R Diesel or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think they're in business anymore, but they used to put on a 2 or 3 day sled pull drag race event. And I literally learned how to drive that truck on the way from Idaho to California, Redding, California, and it was miserable, man. We get such bad turbo surge on the hills, and EGTs were through the roof because I didn't know to downshift and keep the RPMs up. I mean, we just didn't know what we were doing, but it was so much fun.
Yep, it was
Fucking
exciting.
shit up.
Well, and the other thing was it was kind of cool to figure things out back then. So you threw that turbo and you have no idea how it's going to work, and you're kind of figuring it all out. Whereas now it's like you can just look up a recipe somewhere. And I feel like you end up with the other way. You're disappointed because this turbo isn't working as good as the 600 other people you read on the forum that was probably lying to you on Facebook or wherever.
Exactly.
Back then it was like, shit, is this going to work? I hope it does because I just spent a lot of money on it. And then, oh shit, it doesn't work. Let's throw all this away and try and sell it and get something different. And
there was a little bit of the trolling going on back then, but very, very little. We were very much comrades back in the day.
Yep.
We were trying to teach each other. And now you've got the new cool fad is trolling, and I'm guilty of it. I enjoy the hell out of it. I'll do anything to crawl up somebody's skirt and piss them off and like carry it on for like 25, 30 minutes, maybe 2 days, and just be like, hey bro, I was just kidding.
Yeah.
Like, I know you're really mad and you've got a pistol in your mouth, but I was totally joking.
Just joking.
And that's unfortunately bled over into our world. Mm-hmm. And so you end up with these guys that are like, oh yeah, throw a 66 on there or S480 as a single, that 12 valve will spool it, and then the poor kid does it.
And then you and I get to deal with the aftermath. They show up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. The first time that I ever was around anything that had twins on it, compounds, this is like way back in the day. It was probably, oh my God, 98, 99, 2000-ish, right around that zone.
Oh, yes, the HX35 over
HT3B.
HT3Bs. Yeah. Good Lord, those big old semi-turbos, they sucked.
Yeah. So we went out to, it was the one before, the TDR. So the Turbo Diesel Register Forum. All those guys were going to Enterprise Engine out in Ohio. And looking back at it, like even telling the story, I was just thinking of it a second ago, it seems almost kind of retarded. One guy was going to get a double disc clutch put in. So we, like a whole group of us, like 10 of us, all went out to Enterprise Engine to, I don't know what, just go, I guess.
to witness this monstrosity of a clutch.
And then see a shop, and I'd never been around a quote unquote diesel performance shop, So I don't know what I was expecting. But I wasn't expecting like the same thing as my dad's like shop that I grew up in. It was just a shop. Like there's nothing glamorous about it. They're working on an old shitty dump truck beside, another truck they're putting twins on. But Dave that owned the place, I think we were going to get some lunch or something. And he said to me and another guy, he's like, hey, you guys want to ride with me? I'm like, sure. So we walk out to this old, I'm pretty sure it was red, extended cab dually shop truck. And I mean, It was a 24 valve, I think. It might have been a 12 valve, but it's the second gen style. And it was, it was probably only a few years old, but it'd been used as a shop truck. It's like all scuffed up and kind of looks like a piece of shit.
Ragged out.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we get in it, and I'm not thinking anything of it. He starts up, and we start going, and it's like, what's that noise? Like, and then we get out in the 4 lanes, and he hammers on that thing. I'm like, holy shit! Like, this is amazing. And it was probably 500, 600 horse at the most. I mean, back then that was insanity. Yeah, it was insanity.
Yeah.
And
yeah, we made fun of those people on the forums. We're like, stop adding up the numbers on the box, idiot.
Yep, it's true. And that was, that first time I ever rode in anything that ran really good. And you're like, oh, this is a whole different thing than what everybody thinks it is. This is fun. This is almost scary. So different times. I do think it's kind of funny, or not funny. I guess it's kind of cool that all of those people have somehow stayed around. And, here we are 20 years later, and everybody's still doing it on some level of in the business or whatever. I think it's super cool to see everybody go, or a lot of the guys went from some dude on the forum just talking shit. Do you think this would work? I don't know. Try this. 20 years ago to, guys, Lenny and, all those guys, having these established, long, known diesel businesses. I think that's super cool. I'm really.
It's awesome. And I love it for those guys, man. I'm so proud of them. Like, I know that means nothing coming from me, but it's like watching, Brad from Fast develop his company from, the first time I ever talked to Brad, he was in his garage putting pumps together, and legal battles with, the other guys. And I was just like, I just wanted to support him because he was going out on a limb. And now look at him.
Yep.
I took a perfectly good running competitor's pump off my truck just to give Brad a chance. And that was nothing, but you get enough people that are willing to give a guy that chance. And then you see what he's built out of that company today. And it's like, man, we were a part of that. We were a really small part of that. Like, we were the nickels and dimes in the beginning that maybe got his ramen noodles while he was sleeping on an army cot in an empty house, but we were part of that.
Yep.
And so, I just think it's awesome.
Yeah, just to see
guys succeed.
Yep, it's a cool thing. And it is kind of also funny to see the amount of guys that have come and gone through the past 20 years. That I remember, I'm not going to name anybody out, but I remember a few places in particular that came out and they were just like the next greatest, the most amazing thing in the world. And then like 18 months later, they're gone, Nobody knows where they are. People are asking if they have their phone number. Like, they need their trucks back. And
I had one of them lived right in Kellogg, Idaho, 40 minutes from me. And it was like, it was too good to be true. The market sold the product. Like, what you were getting out of it was like, no, come on, man. Right. It's a pressure box. It can't give me 5 miles to the gallon and 400 horsepower, but they were marketing it so hot and heavy. And everybody bought into it. Like, they got us. They totally noodled us.
Yep.
And I watched the dude built a mansion and pimped it out and landscaped it out. And 2 years later, it was foreclosed on.
Crazy, ain't it? Different world. One of the ones that are getting me right now, and I hate to even say this out loud. I'm probably going to get all sorts of hate thrown my way. Are those stupid throttle sensitivity things?
That's exactly what I'm talking about,
dude.
And it's the same guys peddling them, but it's like it's their kids and it's their kids' high school buddies now,
right?
Every
it time
used to be Dr. Speed's pressure box module, crappy technology, and these people buy it with huge expectations, and then they come to the shop and we got to break their heart and give them the reality check.
Be like, no, dude, nothing's different. It's just the pedal when you get the quarter is now at 50. It's
exactly
like there's nothing different. Yeah, it sucks. And that's one of the things. It's kind of weird too. All of us talk all the time, and it seems like I think a lot of people. To be honest, I think Premier did a great thing for all of us by taking us on those trips way back in the beginning. I don't know that we would all be as close of friends without things like that bring us together, because even at the races or the polls, you still kind of hung out, but everybody was always busy. Either
looking over our shoulders. Well, you were you were talking smack, and I saw it. You know, it's like you'd walk up and you'd be walking down Vendor Row there, you know, trying to go get a turbo from the industrial booth. Like, hey, man, you guys got a T3 back there? We can bolt up. We just blew one up. And then you stop and you talk to the guy next to him, you know, and then as you're walking away, like, that guy's such a douchebag. And the Premier Cruise really squashed all that. You know, that's when we became friends. And there's still some of that backstabbing stuff going on. Like the e-commerce guys that are strictly e-commerce, they are always going to hate us. Like they're never going to want to get their fingers dirty. They don't want to scuff their blue suede shoes and get their khakis greasy, but they just want to bitch about Steam Data Co-op and how fast can I load 10,000 products onto my crappy e-commerce store. And we're like, hey, would you guys please quit selling compounds to people with stock injectors? Like, it's not just a sale. It's a human. The e-commerce was that was a hard business for me to get into, you know, coming from a shop life and then going to work at Alligator. It was like, wow, you can just sell parts and not know anything about them. Like, we're glorified cashiers. And it was really cool to watch that transform. You know, when Chad made me sales manager, it was like, I didn't know how to manage. I didn't know anything about sales. I just knew diesel parts, and we accidentally sold a bunch because if a guy called up to order an S&B, I could be like, you know, hey man, you don't need to take that to a shop. You can do it in your driveway with an 8mm ratchet, a socket and a ratchet, and, you know, flathead screwdriver. And it was just that little bit of knowledge exploded so quickly on us. And, you know, we went from nobodies to, I felt like it, you know, we were competition to Thoroughbred and XDP way back then, you know, 2009, 2010.
You're talking about Alligator, right?
Yeah.
So those that didn't know.
And so Chad's like, look, you know, hire some of your buddies. We can't keep up with the phones. And so next thing you know, I got these farm hands and ranch hands and a bunch of damn redneck cowboys. And Chad's like, what the heck are you doing? But it was a bunch of kids that knew how to go out there with a wrench and bloody their knuckles and put a turbo on a combine in the middle of a hayfield 14 acres from home. You know, I mean, it was just a totally different business model that wasn't a business model, but it worked.
And you were talking to a real person that knew real things instead of this clunky salesperson at Summit, you know, who doesn't know dick about dick.
Exactly. And a lot of times when you're talking to one of those e-commerce sales guys, it's some, you know, college kid just trying to make part-time money, and they got a guy standing over their shoulder like, you need to close this deal in 5 minutes or get on to the next call. And I'm like, we weren't like that. We were not those people. We were, you know, our standard was, hey, you know, I don't care if the guy's calling to buy an air filter or a industrial race engine, you know, spend the time with him because that air filter could turn into an industrial race engine. Treat this guy right and his family's going to call it. Treat this guy right and his friends are going to call. And that was what worked.
You know, it's funny. I worked the phones nonstop, and then we got a bunch of employees, and then I finally got sick of all that shit. And I work the phones almost exclusively now. And it's funny, people like 10, 12 years ago that called me for something are still calling, you know, and it's just so weird that you'd have a customer for 10, 12 years that's calling you up, and he bought a truck back in, you know, 2009 and got some shit, and then he called you back in 2013 when he got another one. And it's those relationships, I think, have become more important. Like, it seemed like for a while there, the e-commerce stuff got a little buck wild, and everybody was just, you know, jumping wherever and buying their parts. And it seems like it's come back around now because so many people got fucked over on a regular basis.
Well, it's the gold rush. You know, it's the gold rush. That people see one company succeeding and they're like, well, I can build a website and I can do this. But they didn't do it 100% right. They skimped out on the Google AdWords. They skimped out on the marketing. They skimped out on the sales guys. If you don't get it 100% right, you're not going to find any gold. And so that's what happened. We had this gold rush that swept through the country, through the industry. Everybody and their brother had a business card sized ad at the back of Diesel Power magazine. And it just fizzled out because it didn't work for so many people.
Well, and the other thing, and I'm super guilty of this too, was I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. We started growing incredibly fast, and you know, there was no, I wasn't lucky enough, and I don't think a lot of people were, to have like a hardcore business person around you that understood a lot of things that I didn't understand.
Right.
And I just learned them by paying massive amounts of stupid tax over and over again. you know, just like, oh, fuck, I screwed all that up. How much is that? Oh, 20 grand. All right, great. You know, just that over and over and over and over again until you're finally like, you kind of figure it out. And I think that happened to a lot of people, and some made it, some didn't, you know. It's a tough go, especially when you're
Yeah,
just
it's
adding people. Like, you know, just perfect example is I'd always been in charge of people for a good almost 15, 20 years. I ran crews and all sorts of different things. And then when I started, you know, in right around 2008-ish, growing and getting employees of quote unquote my own. And oh my God, it's like a whole different ball game. And even though I was somewhat prepared, I wasn't. I don't know if anybody ever actually is, but it's a different world for for everybody, especially when you're growing
it
like that.
is it is, and the number one thing I've learned, you know, in the last 5 years in this industry is, and it really is just this stupid simple, and I see it on Facebook and the diesel shop owners group and stuff like that, and just different groups that I'm in, and people are so stressed out and they like hate their shop and they hate their life, and I'm like, bro, that's your choice.
Yep.
Like, that is literally your choice. No, it's not me, it's this one mechanic. Fire that dude. If he's ruining your life and making you miserable, fire him. Get rid of him. You don't need that in your life. Go back out in the shop, pick up the slack yourself. You'll love it. You're gonna get back into it. You're gonna fall back in love with it. And right about the time you get sick of it, some rock star will show up and step into your life.
Yep.
And hire him. You know, it's just get rid of the toxic, crappy people, and you can love your job again. You can love your business again. You can love what you do again.
Right.
So I mean, the number one thing I enjoy is the interaction with the customer. You know, I love the mind game of, you know, I got to figure out in 13 seconds, is this guy, does he want to talk about diesels? Does he want to hear about diesels? Does he just want the part number and give you a credit card and get off the phone? And that's so fun to me, because you can cater to so many more people and take 100% better care of them and their expectations by keying into that I'd say body language, but we can't even see them. It's just like their voice mannerisms. It's psychology. It's really cool.
And you know,
so I have a lot of fun with that.
I'm still amazed even to this day all the time. So you'll get people, there's a lot of, especially the bigger stuff. It usually takes a few phone calls for them to kind of figure out what they want and price everything out. But it's the ones that I get the biggest kick out of, that just call up, and in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, here we go. This is the beginning of like 5 phone calls. And you wing it out there and you're like, all right, that's going to be like 18 grand for all this stuff you just asked for. And he's like, okay. And you're like, all right, well,
okay.
You know? And he's like, no, okay. Do you just want my credit card, or how's this work? And you're like, wait, what?
Dude, what you just described right there to me, the only thing I can associate that to in my life is shooting a deer. Like that few seconds before you pull the trigger and you get the shakes and all that adrenaline, and you're like, oh my God, they went for it? Like, I thought I was just wasting my time the last 5 days.
Yeah.
And I've had some even bigger surprises where I thought it was maybe one of those, like, man, this guy, he's going to spend some money, but he might be wasting my time, but he might spend some money, so I'm going to be nice. I'm getting a little frustrated. This is day 3, phone call number 7. Like, you know, in the impatience human side of us is like, you know, go ahead, shit or get off the pot. I got stuff to do.
Yep.
But you choke that down and you kind of struggle through being polite. And I've had a few of them where it was, you know, a $20,000-$30,000 deal, and then they come in, they'll flop down on the couch in my office, and they'll be like, hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm like, yeah, I don't know who that is. And they're like, you've been talking to me on the phone for like 6 days. I'm like, I talk to 200 people a day, bro. I literally don't know.
Right.
And they're like, well, then they'll say something about the quote that I'll remember. You know, be like, oh, it's that 6'4". I want to do the Cummins swap. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. What's up?
Right.
Oh, I was testing you out. I wanted to see if I could burn you out or if you'd stick with me, and you stuck with me. So, you know, I want to spend 150 grand on this truck. I'm like, holy balls.
Right. Score.
Did not see that coming.
Well, that's the other thing I used to hate about going to shows and stuff. There'd be people that I might have talked to 100 times on the phone, and you'd go to a event or a show, and this dude's walked up to you and he's talking to you like your long lost high school, you know, friends or something. And you're like, finally,
did you get the Christmas card I sent last year? No. Who are you?
Yeah. And finally you're like, yeah, who are you? And then you're like, oh shit. How you doing, man? Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough one
It's awesome.
sometimes.
I love that's the stuff that I like. But no, it's never been about money for me because I'm not the owner. I'm just the dumbass that answers the phone. And I don't get paid commission, so it doesn't matter if it's 150 grand or $5. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it literally does not matter to me. For me, I still have an undying passion for diesel performance, even with the EPA cracking down on stuff and these weird laws that we don't understand, we'll never understand because they're fake
Right.
made up laws that
On the spot, made up.
it's literally like playing Monopoly with a 5-year-old. It's like, well, what about this? Is this okay? No.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know. Okay, what about this? Is this okay? Yeah, you can do that, but it's totally illegal according to what you just told me. Yeah, I don't really know. And
Right.
so that's been frustrating.
Well, and
So
every one of those laws is like an interpretation of an abstract painting. Like
yeah,
you're looking at the painting going, I don't even understand what the fuck this even means. And then there's
Salvador Dali.
yeah, there's some dude going, well, this is what it means.
Look at a
You're like,
Salvador Dali painting, and you're like, "Is that a titty?" No, that's a heel with a nipple on it. Yeah, you're right. That's a heel with a nipple on it. And two days later, somebody's like, "Oh, there's a titty in that picture." I'm like, no, "Yeah, it is a titty."
it's crazy. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's the EPA in a nutshell. Yeah, that's EPA laws and how to be compliant with them. Just look at it long enough, and you'll get it.
So the shop you work at now, what was it? A few years ago, didn't you guys all get new trucks for
Yeah.
some deal?
So I got hired from Alligator, and I was selling parts to these guys down here, and it was kind of a joke. Like, we met on the premiere cruise, we got to be really good friends, and it was kind of a joke. Like, every night he'd call and he'd order his parts. And this was back when Premiere had their huge ARP shortage. ARP ran
Mm-hmm.
out of inventory on 6.0 studs. It seemed like it used to happen every 3 years, like this weird phenomenon. Like, ARP just forgot 6-liter head studs had to be manufactured. Oh shit, It's
Yep.
been 3 years and we're out. And so we had some pretty fat inventory on them when I was up at Alligator. And so it was like every night calling order studs for the month and then, or the week, and then, a couple air intakes. And it was like, oh, hey, do you want a office with a view, or do you want an office with no windows? And I was like, yeah, I'm not coming down there. No, what's fine, whatever. And, it's just life at Alligator was getting stressful, and I blame it on growth. Like, we grew
Mm-hmm.
way too fast, and none of us was ready for it, and none of us knew what we were doing. Like, we were just growing. Like, I felt like, have you ever seen the movie Boiler Room?
Yep.
I felt like that was us at Alligator. Like, we went from sitting in a warehouse on the floor with like 800 phones, and all of a sudden we were in this like Mac Daddy beautiful office space with cubicles and like 25 employees. And I was just like, how did this happen?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so stressful. Like, I still wanted to be doing sales and having fun with customers. Instead, I was trying to help run a business and like orchestrate all these people and make sure everybody's getting along, and then orchestrate events. And it all built up, and it was like, this isn't fun anymore.
Right.
And Chad's stressed out, and I'm stressed out, and everybody's just stressed out because it was just too much too fast.
Well,
And so one night he calls me and he says, do you want hardwood floors in your office or carpet? And I was like, hardwood floors, I'll see you Saturday. And it was just that, it was that fast. It was that easy. And I don't really regret it. There's times that I wish, I'm curious as to what would have happened if I'd stayed there and,
mm-hmm.
and, worked through stress and just the insanity of it all. But I mean, life in Georgia has been amazing. But yeah, I came down, and it was the owner and 2 mechanics, full-time mechanics out in the shop. His wife and sister were doing the books in a little tiny office with no windows. I mean, it was a 2-bay shop that we could stuff about 10, 11 trucks into if you played your
Mm-hmm.
Tetris just right. And there was always one blocked in the back that got done before the others. It was just a nightmare. And so we basically very rapidly, he and I were talking one night. He offered me way too much money. I didn't know what I was coming into. I guess social media deceives you. And so you think you're going into this big shop, and you get here and I'm like, oh my gosh, they can't afford to pay me what they offered, kind of a deal. But the owner knew what I was capable of, and I didn't know what I was capable of, kind of a deal. Like, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
think I could do it. And so we immediately moved into this huge 10,000 square foot shop, 8 drive-through bays, big office space, upstairs, downstairs, bathrooms, upstairs, downstairs, kitchen, like Mac Daddy setup, right?
Right.
So to go from a 2-bay grease bucket to this, it was a big financial jump. And he came in my office one night and he's a little frustrated, and back then the phones would ring, 7, 8, 9 times a day. And I'd run upstairs and answer the phone. I'd go back down, turn wrenches, run upstairs, answer the phone. And it just wasn't quite enough to sustain what they'd offered me. And so we were kind of talking one night and he was frustrated and I was frustrated and embarrassed, and my wife and kids are still out in Montana. I'm trying to get them down here. I've been here for 2-3 months by myself. I'm lonely. And he's like, dude, you got to make these phones ring. And I was like, I'm not a freaking magician. I can't make the phones ring. Like, I answer every single phone call and I'm selling 100%. I never lose a sale. Like, I'm doing everything I can. And that night I laid in bed and I was so embarrassed that I said that to him because I can make the phones ring. And so I just hit the social media hard. I tattooed my personal Facebook profile up with LFDP. Back then there was still some forums hanging on. I was a diehard big time Cummins guy coming into the power stroke world, which was kind of weird and a little bit embarrassing. Like, I've been talking crap about these things for 15 years and now I got to work on them and sell parts for them. And so I would just, out in Montana, there's not a whole lot of power strokes back then because everything was Huey injected. And you're talking about a climate that's 20 below zero for 2 weeks out of the year. Like, if you want a 7.3, you're walking to work for 2 weeks. And so they weren't stupid popular out there, and I just didn't know as much about them as I did the Cummins stuff. So I had to very quickly change lanes, change my attitude, change the way I talk to these power stroke guys, and learn about them. And these guys down here, they were sled pulling with 6 liters when we were building Cummins motors, and they were winning. And I was just like, I had all the same crap that every other Cummins had on it. And so it was like first place, second place, third place sled pulling. They were all within a foot because we all had the same crap. And it was just who had the better reaction time coming off the line and who didn't slip the clutch. And, there's a little bit of skill involved. But at the end of the day, we all had the same power. And these guys are down here making 200 more horsepower with a 6 liter. And I was like, oh, my God, like, what rods are you running? Oh, they're stock. No, come on now. You're pulling my leg. No, here, we'll open it up this weekend. It's stock. I was just blown away. So I got pretty excited because it was something new, where I had gotten burned out on the same 5 Cummins questions or conversations I had every day at Alligator, the same 5 Duramax questions I got asked every single day. You do that for so many years, you're going to get burned out with nothing changing. And so this power stroke stuff was new and it was exciting and I was learning again and I had something to be enthusiastic about. And so he said, the next day, I guess he felt bad. I was embarrassed that I told him I couldn't make the phones ring. So we went to lunch together and I was like, man, I can make the phones ring. I'm going to work my ass off. Like, I'll stay up till 2 a.m. every night, answering questions on social media, posting pictures to our page, building our audience and stuff. And he was like, look, if you can do $80,000 in profit in a month, I'll take that profit and I'll buy you a brand new truck. And I laughed at him. I was like, yeah, I think we did like 13 grand profit this month. You want me to times that by 7?
Right.
You're adorable. That's funny. And so I kind of laughed it off and went to work and we just buckled down and worked. And it went by like, it happened so fast that when the day came and he told me what we did in a week, I was like, floored. I was like, there's no way. Like, there's just no freaking way we did it that fast. And so he took me out and bought me a brand new 2014 F250 Lariat Ultimate, like nicest thing on the lot, aside from a platinum. And it was a ruby red metallic. So it was like the first one of that color that I'd ever seen. So it was just a once in a lifetime for me. And we still have that truck today. And so, the company just continued to grow. And I could only do so much. There's a point where one man's mouth maxes out.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you got to start looking at the shop. And it's like, the guys in the shop are doing this now. Like, I can sell it. But if it doesn't get done, you don't get the money. And all of a sudden they were getting it done. And so he finally it was just a total surprise. It was a Friday evening. He took the top 4 diesel mechanics, I want to say, maybe 5, and run them up into town and bought every single one of them brand new Lariats.
That's awesome.
But at the same token, people are like, well, you guys are expensive. You're the most expensive shop in town. And it's like, yeah, but we've got the same mechanics that've been here 8, 9, 10, 12, 13 years, that's how you keep people around. A raise every year will eventually break you, but if you take that guy out and buy him a brand new truck, that's something that would take me and one of those mechanics 6, 7, 8 years to pay off.
Right.
So when you look at it that way, it's a much bigger bonus than people realize. You're basically sliding that $1,000 truck payment into that guy's pocket every month.
Yep. Absolutely, man.
$1,000 a month raise is a stout raise.
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Yeah, that was when I saw that story, or I don't even know how I found out about it. Maybe, I don't know if you guys posted on social media or somebody was telling me.
Yeah.
I was like, that's pretty
did.
sweet. Really super sweet, actually. It's weird. Like you guys exploded, and that's probably the reason why, the story you just told. But just all of a sudden, one day I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like there's 300 vehicles in their parking lot. Like what the fuck is going on down there? That's
insanity.
Awesome,
I mean, it's social media 100%. People that ignore it or don't think they have time for it. If you don't have time for social media, you don't like money, because because of social media, we're a very cut and dry, honest shop. Like we don't have sales guys. It's a couple of diesel truck enthusiasts on the phone that don't know much about doing business, but we know a lot about diesel trucks, and we know a lot about taking care of people and treating people right. We have a production company in California that will only allow us to work on their trucks. They were in Georgia on set. We got a lot of filming industry down here because we give them, state of Georgia gives them a huge tax break to do film movies down here. And so they were out here doing a movie, the newest Need for Speed movie, and one of their 6.4s went down, and they brought it to us. And so we called them, told them what was wrong with it, and they're like, no, we've got a whole fleet of these things. We know it needs a motor. It's got to have a motor. We know that. We're prepared to put a motor in it. We're like, no, you got to bust it up pipe. and so we were just honest with them, and so that's all it takes is that one honest moment. And you've all of a sudden got a fleet of vehicles traveling across the United States to come here. And I keep trying to talk them out of it. I'm like, this is flattering. It's wonderful. It's great. But you've got some really good diesel shops in your backyard. You got Bulletproof Diesel, one of the leading experts in this industry for power strokes, and especially for power stroke problem solving. They're in Nevada. That's like a quarter of the trip. Take it there. And they're just like, nope, we're coming to Leadfoot. And so
that's awesome.
It's really been cool to see how simple honesty and not taking advantage of somebody in a bad situation. They're all the way across the country. They fully expected an $18,000 bill, and they walked out with an $800 bill. That's the stuff that grew us.
Sweet.
And then there's a million stories like that, but it's cool to see customers test us and test our honesty. We'll have one come in on a big fleet like that, where you've got a pipeline company out of Kansas that's got a job in Atlanta, and they bring a truck in and it does need a $20,000 engine or something horrific. And, like, oh my God, that was a huge bill. This sucks. And then they'll bring in like a total problem child. Like you see it pull in the parking lot and, you're like, oh my gosh, they bought a 6-liter. Like, why? And then they pull it in and it's got 400,000 on it. And they're like, go ahead, check it top to bottom, make sure everything's 100%, do whatever it needs to it. And it needs an ICP sensor and a pigtail, and that's really all you can find wrong with it.
Right.
And so I called the guy and I was like, yeah, it's a good solid truck. I mean, it hasn't been studded, but it doesn't have any pressure in the cooling system. Somebody's taking really good care of it. It's got a lot of new parts on it. And he's like, yeah, that was a test. I just took it to 2 other shops that told me it needed head gaskets, and I brought it to you to do the work, and you were actually honest with me. So that's one thing I can say to anybody out there, man. Like, it is not worth it to get that one $5,000 job that profits you $1,200. It's not worth it to lose a customer that's got a fleet of 90 trucks to get that one little payday.
Yep.
Those paydays come, and it's because that guy tells 8 other company fleets to come to you.
Well, and
that's a very valuable lesson.
The other thing, if I can go back and start over again, we're not doing shop work anymore. I sidestepped it. It was all of my grief, and we're kind of in a more of a country area here, so it was just always chaos. But I wish I could go back and charge more and do less shit. Like, I wish at the very beginning I had more balls to charge way more an hour for our services than we ever did. Maybe not the first year, but after the first couple years. And then turned away things that I knew were going to be bags of shit that I took on anyways, just because, you know, and you end up, I just want to sit young guys that are starting out down being like, dude, double your rate and turn away like half of this work. Like you have
Well, that's just it, because your reviews are everything. You know, social media is so big, and you've got Google, and you've got Yelp, and you've got Facebook, and you've got, you know, Instagram, and you got all these reviews just flooding in, and it's pure pandemonium trying to keep up with it. And I do that all by myself here. You know, nobody else answers our reviews. Nobody else looks at our reviews. It all comes into my email, and it's a full-time job keeping up with reviews. And I spend more time replying to the bad ones than I do the good ones. You know, the good ones, it's like, oh, hey, John, thanks for allowing us to serve you. We look forward to serving you in the future. Have a wonderful time. Enjoy your truck. It's a really nice one. Bye.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get that 1-star review, and this guy writes a novel about how pissed off he is because you didn't suck on his toenails when he walked in the door.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, baby.
Yep.
Oh, baby.
Ever since you've worked in his truck, his dog doesn't hunt right anymore and all that shit.
That's right. Yeah, you changed my head gasket, and now my left taillight blinks faster than the right one. It's like, dude, I'm taking you to Pound Town. And you know, I try to avoid the 1-star reviews at all costs, but you know as well as I do, the people that are going to leave you a 1-star review is that customer that you were just never going to make happy to begin with.
Yep. And you learn to spot them right from the beginning too.
Yep.
You're like,
yep.
Oh.
Man, we're about 2 weeks out, and even at that, there's, you know, COVID, parts are on back order. It may be 6 months before I can get to your truck. Oh, well, do you know anybody else? Yeah, this guy down the road, he's like $20 an hour cheaper than us, and not a whole lot going on in this parking lot. Go down there. So yeah, you definitely learn the value of the customer, and you learn which customers to invest your time in. And that old saying, the customer's always right, could not be further from the truth. That is the biggest BS lie this country's ever told us.
Yep.
As business people or business managers or business owners, that is the biggest lie. The customer's almost never right, especially in this industry. Like, my truck's got a blown head gasket. Nah, bud, your thermostat's stuck and your water pump's not working right.
Well, what's really weird is, and I suppose maybe the only other thing that the industry that this is really happening in right now, maybe is the medical field, is with the internet coming along, everybody is a fucking expert.
Self-diagnose.
And you wouldn't, obviously if your plumber shows up and you have a broken pipe, he's like, it's going to be $200 to fix that. You need a section of pipe. Unless, if you're calling a plumber, you weren't going to do it yourself anyways. But for some reason, when it comes to vehicle repairs, everybody's certain they're getting screwed over. And then they have figured out that they could probably do it themselves anyways. And they can't. That's the problem. Yep. They think they can. Well, if I just did it myself, and you're like, well, I mean, and it's like, again, it goes back to the customers. As soon as you start to see him, you're like, well, not this guy. Like, we're going to just have to push him right towards the back or whatever. So, yeah, different world.
No, it is. And it's the number one thing that I experience in our industry, especially in the power strokes. And I'm going to hurt some feelings right now, because I know there's some people that I'm very good friends with that misdiagnose this daily, is high pressure oil pumps on 6 liters.
Oh God.
Like 0304, right? Aluminum pump. We all know they're junk. They fail prematurely. They have tons of problems. No start conditions, hot start conditions. A lot of times it can be a high pressure oil pump. And unfortunately in the industry, we use programs like Identifix, Mitchell One, All Data, and you punch in that code and it automatically says possible fixes, pump failure, IPR failure. Well, what does every service writer in the industry do? Go for the big ticket item with all the labor.
Yep.
And that frustrates me to no end, because in the 15 years that I've been doing this, we have replaced the high pressure pump in a 05, 06, 07, 250, 350 truck. We've done maybe 5 that I can think of. We got three guys on the phones, but 5 that I talked to in 15 years. And you got shops right down the street that are slinging 05, 06, 07 high pressure pumps like 3 and 4 a week.
Mm-hmm.
and we've done 5 and 15 years, they're simply not diagnosing the problem correctly. And they get away with it because they call the customer and they say, oh man, we put a high pressure pump in, it still wouldn't start, but we found a bunch of metal in the IPR and we put that in and it fired right up.
Yep.
Well, if you would have put the IPR in to begin with, it would have fired right up.
Right.
And that just drives me crazy. Like,
yeah,
that's what I tell customers. Like, if somebody tells you this, run.
Right. My other favorite one, and this is the universal one that I get this phone call all the time, and I finally quit taking like what's wrong with my truck tech calls. I finally made like I got fucked off one day, and I finally, if you call our shop right now, it says if you need tech support about a product you're going to buy or one that you already bought or something like that, press 1. If you need help diagnosing your truck for any reason, like it's not running, please have your credit card ready. It's $2 a minute for support. And nobody pushes that $2 a minute except for really nice people. And they're like, do you want my credit card? I just need some help. I'll let the secret out. I'm always like, nah, dude, I'll help you. Like, whatever. It's no big deal.
Right.
But the one that I get all the time, and I'm just like, no, dude, it's not, is the bad PCM. Like, it seems like the PCM is like on every mechanic's second step of every diagnostic. The truck, it's running funny or something. So wait, it starts and runs? Yep. It's not the PCM. Like almost fucking never. Like if it's dead, like if you can't hook to it with a scan tool and it's dead, it might be the PCM.
Yeah.
But
no communication with the PCM and all the fuses are perfect and all the wiring harnesses check out and all the plugins and sensors are good. Okay.
Yeah. And I hear it. I bet you I hear it twice a week. I'm just like, dude, it's not the PCM. Well, that's what they're saying. I'm like, well, you're going to put it in, but it's something else. It's always something else. And I just feel bad that there's probably a whole PCM industry that rebuilds perfect PCMs. Like, I feel like 8 out of 10 they get back, or there's like
I don't even think I think they're intelligent enough. They don't even rebuild them. They just slap a sticker on it, remanufactured. If this seal is broken, avoid your warranty, because they don't want you to know that they didn't take it apart.
I guarantee it. It's crazy. Yeah. So you went, switching gears real quick. You went hog hunting this weekend, I think I saw on social media.
I did.
That looked like a good time.
Dude, it was my first weekend, so I'm usually a big time hunter. I used to tell people I work, 11 and a half months out of the year so that I can hunt. The last 2 years has been wild. We bought a huge house that I never would have bought. I've never been a big house person, but it was just too good of a deal to pass up. Somebody got murdered in the basement, and that doesn't bother me. So no, they couldn't sell it. And I was like, man, if a ghost wants to watch me wipe my ass and beat off, I'm totally cool with that.
It's no problem.
You can even take pictures and post them on Facebook. I have no pride. And so we bought it, and it just had a lot wrong with it. It's a very, very weird house, very cool history. And we bought it, needed a lot of work. So I spent the first year working on the house, and I kind of skipped hunting season. And this year I was building the wine rack for Peter down there in Florida, and I had to get it done. I started that project thinking I could do it in 2 or 3 months, and it was a mathematical nightmare. And then I was working with wet wood that was supposed to have been kiln dried, and I paid a lot of extra money for that feature, and I didn't get it. And so when the wood started moving, it created this whole other dynamic that I had to work around. So the wine rack ended up taking me a year. And so Peter asked me, this fall, he was like, look, man, we're going on a year. Like, I'd really like to get this thing in by Christmas. Is it possible? And I was like, honest to a fault. I was like, no. Like, I was an idiot for telling you this could be done in 2 to 3 months. I had no idea what I was getting into. The math was hard. The actual joinery was even harder. And I was like, but I'll kill myself to try and get it done by Christmas. And I did. So I've been tucked away in my woodworking shop for months. Haven't had a life, haven't done anything fun. So this weekend we went hog hunting, took one of the guys at the shop. He's got a little hunting property and cabin up in the mountains. And so we went up there and lived like Neanderthals this weekend. It was a blast.
Nice. How the hell did you make that? That cabinet or rack, I guess it would be. How did you make that? Like, I was looking at it, I saw the picture, and I'm like, how the fuck did you do that with wood?
It was sent. What I was sent was a 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch picture off of a Pinterest screenshot. And I was volunteered by a good friend of mine that I met early on in the diesel industry, DJ Calloway,
Mm-hmm.
DJ's Diesel out in Washington State. Peter put the picture up on Facebook and he was like, look, we've been trying to find somebody to build this. People are telling me it can't be done. Other people are telling me it can be done, but it's got to be steam bent, CNC machines, blah, blah, blah. We want a piece of handmade art and not a machine built project. And so good old DJ Calloway tags me in and he's like, Vinny Himes can do it. And at first glance, I was like, oh yeah, that's easy. You carve the radius piece and the straight pieces are straight pieces, whatever. And then, after I put my proverbial foot in my mouth, I started really looking at the picture. And if you blew it up too big, it distorted really bad. But at one point, I could clearly tell all the grain, the wood grain was all going perfectly diagonal. And there's only one way to do that, and that's a veneer. And so I started hunting around Facebook. I found the company that actually built the one that was in the picture. And I sent them an email, asked, what's this project involve? What's the material cost? What's the timeline? And it is all CNC steam bent pine with a black walnut veneer. For the uneducated woodworker, that is gayer than cum in a mustache. Like, it doesn't get any gayer in the woodworking world. That is IKEA and Walmart furniture, is plywood and pine wrapped in a plastic veneer. You just don't do it. And so I knew that was the moment when a cold sweat trickled between my shoulders. And, the little kid sitting on the school bus, I'm in danger.
Right. I have made a mistake.
And, by then I was pretty committed. Peter had already stroked him a check. I had already done a materials takeoff. Like, I'd already ordered the wood. And, it was like, yeah, the wood's going to cost $16,000. And it's, I need this size of black walnut. And I was all going to cut this out of big radius bends and do it on my bandsaw. And so I knew right then when they told me that was steam bent pine with a veneer, I was like, man, I'm fixing to, I have bit off way more than I could chew.
I'm going to have to invent some things.
I did, literally. And so then even worse than that, I found out nobody in the country could fulfill the wood order that I had already been quoted on. So then I had to do this massive redesign. And you got to think, I'm doing this whole thing in my head. I have no drawings. I have no CAD blueprints. I have nothing but this 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch picture. And in the picture, the dimensions of the wine rack, I found out after contacting the company, was 8 foot wide by 8 feet tall. It's a perfect square. Well, the space that I had to put it in was 8 feet tall by 12 feet wide. And so I all of a sudden have to do all this crazy math to try and keep the pattern the same and keep everything flowing the math involved was an absolute nightmare. And I'm not some mathematician. Like, I'm a stupid hillbilly that barely made it out of high school and been busting my knuckles and turning wrenches and selling parts online for the last 12 years. I haven't done woodworking in 12 years. And so this was a big project to bite off. I used to build $15 million homes out of heavy timber. I was never a cabinet worker. I was never a furniture guy. I didn't even own the tools to build furniture. So that was part of the deal, is like, I got to buy all these specialty tools. Like, I don't care to make any money off of this. I just don't want to lose any money making this. Like, it was a challenge to me. And it was a quest for hand-built art, which kind of is cool. And so I was doing something that had never been done before and still hasn't been done. Hopefully it'll never be done, because that poor dude's going to shoot himself. I thought about it. I just don't like the flavor of gunpowder that much. So,
and Peter's a super cool dude. He's one of my favorites.
Dude, he is. He really is. And I've known Peter for 15 years and met him at events and, smoked cigars with him on cruise ships, but we were never like super good best friends. He is stuck with my ass now because we're family. Like, I can't tell you the stressful text messages I had to type out and just be brutally honest, where I knew he was like, what is taking this guy so long? And I was just like, I am stupid. And there was one night where he had stroked me a check for materials and tools and stuff like that. And I was literally sitting down in my basement, completely defeated, because I just could not figure this one piece out. Like, it was a hexagonal trapezoid with a radius running through it. And, you can't physically cut that with any tool known to man other than a chainsaw. So I'm doing fine cabinetry with a chainsaw and scoring my lines with a razor blade so the wood doesn't flake and fray, and then sanding to the line with a sander. I mean, you're talking about thousandths of an inch. Otherwise, this joint's going to have a gap in it. And that was the hardest thing. That was the hardest thing for me, was stopping the perfect cabinetry joinery that nobody was ever going to see. Like, once you fill this thing with wine, all you see is the face.
Right.
And I was worried about the joinery running front to back. And it took a buddy of mine to come over here one night, and he's sitting there drinking and watching me work. And he's like, "You're really stupid. Like, you are stressing out, throwing things, swearing way too much. Oh, we're going to physically see." And I was like, it was like light bulb.
Yep.
And after I realized that, dude, I got the whole entire rest of the project done in 2 months.
Right. Well, you took all that stress off yourself, and you went from done tomorrow is better than perfect never.
Exactly. And honestly, looking at it now, and I'm the only one in the world that'll ever see this, and maybe if Peter hears this podcast, he will, but the joinery on that second half turned out 10 times cleaner, tighter, and nicer than the first half, because I wasn't stressed. Like, I was finally just flowing and letting it work. And that was a frustrating project. I'm glad it's over, and I'm never going to do one again.
Are you going to do other woodworking going forward, or is that kind of
I am
taste? And
no, for me, woodworking is therapy. So usually I'm doing it for free. Like, I'm just tinkering away on things down there. And I built a table for a buddy of mine's wife for Christmas that was just supposed to be a simple farmhouse table. And I got it done, and I showed one person a picture of it, and they're like, "I will give you $5,000 for that table right now." The fact that it took me 4 hours to build it and maybe 7 hours to sand it, nobody really needs to know that. But I'm going to start cranking out some custom tables and see where it goes.
That seems like the move. Seems like a decent return on investment of time.
Yeah, I mean, I got like $250 worth of wood into it, a Saturday morning and a Sunday afternoon worth of sanding and some tung oil. So,
see, that what you're describing right there just seems like, as I get older, how I'm more looking at how I want to live my life. Like, it'd be nice to have a lot of things, but if I can just make one table a week.
Yep.
And then, but I know where that goes. Next thing you know, there's a factory, and you have 25 workers building tables.
Right.
It's like,
well, and that may happen. And if it does, wicked awesome. If it doesn't, I could care less. There's one thing I realized in this world over many years of stress and hard labor and destroying my body and losing friends and destroying relationships. I hate money. I absolutely despise this stuff. I don't need it. I don't want it. I live a comfortable life. I get to talk about diesel trucks all day long, talk to cool people like you on podcasts. So,
right. Well, at some point, there becomes, and I think it takes a while, and I can't remember which celebrity said this, is like, I wish everybody got really rich once and got to get all the things they wanted, to find out it doesn't make you any happier at all.
It doesn't. And I did it. I did it in my 20s. I had the snowmobiles on nitrous, the big jacked up trucks, the enclosed trailers, the boats, the jet skis. I had all that crap. And all I got out of it was a bunch of fake friends. And when the economy tanked and we lost everything, we had to bankrupt the business, because I don't know if you know, when they bailed out all those big banks, all the millionaires became thousandaires, and they weren't building big, extravagant $15 million summer homes anymore.
Weird, huh?
So I went from hero to zero on a Monday morning. I mean, I went to work like every other day. I was stressed out. I had 15 employees. I had 3 5-man crews going on 3 different houses, more houses in the work. And, it just literally by 10 o'clock that morning, I called, and I was stupid, man. I didn't even know what the stock market was. I knew what hard work was. I knew what a hammer did. I knew if you ran a chainsaw to gas. And I was just a workaholic, and I was dumber than hell. And I had a CPA taking care of my finances. I knew better than to be stupid with money. I wasn't just blowing it. But when the accountant said, "Hey, you got to spend this much by the end of the year," you give it to Uncle Sam. I was like, well, we could use a new tractor.
Right.
And so I wasn't squirreling money away and I wasn't blowing money away, but I had no idea what the stock market was, and I had no idea that it controlled my very destiny. And so when I lost everything and had to file bankruptcy, that was the most embarrassing day of my life. Like, I made fun of people that filed bankruptcy,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't realize it could happen to me because of somebody else not doing their job right. The government.
Right. You know, and what's weird about that is this is one of the things that as you get older, if you're not a complete fucking moron, all of a sudden you do have some compassion for other people when you see them. Because I remember thinking, like, you'd see somebody fail at something and be like, oh, he's a fucking moron. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. And then when you fail at a few things, you realize, like, oh, it's never completely like, you were probably doing some shit that you shouldn't have in one way or another, or weren't doing things you should have in some way or another. But we win and live by a lot of the unlucky lottery a lot. Like, one day some random fucking thing happens in the world or in your life, and it just changes everything. And, you know, whether you were prepared for it or not, you couldn't have predicted it. You know, there's no way to. And
and that's the one thing I've learned. We're never prepared for it.
No.
Like, you think, like, we sit here and think and overthink and re-overthink and then think some more. And there's one little thing that we didn't think of. And that's the one little thing that ends it all.
Right. Well, it's always, you think of it, but you go, that would never happen. And then one day you're like, fuck. But when you look back at it, the reason you were saying, oh, that'll never happen, is you couldn't have done anything about it anyways. So if the stock market tanks tomorrow, what were you going to do differently that you did that would have, you know, you were fucked no matter what. So.
Exactly. And it took me a long time. You know, it took me 5 years to accept and understand that. You know, I just kept thinking, like, if I would have worked a little harder, if I would have saved some money, if I would have done that, but none of that would have changed it.
Nope.
You know, even when you're doing $9 million a year in work, sounds like a lot when you're 20 years old. But by the time I was 25, we were doing 40 million a year in work. And I wasn't living any more lavishly than I was at $9 million a year. So there is definitely a point where every business model plateaus in profitability, and then we end up just changing dollars for hands. You know, it's like, yeah, we've grown and we've done all this, but now we have this many more employees, and now we have this much more overhead, and we have this much more shop space, and it's like, we should have stopped back here.
Right. And
going back to there is so hard.
It's so hard. So just in the past couple years there, so we had this really nice, it was about, I don't know how many square foot, around 20,000 square foot building that we were leasing. And the guy that owned it was going to make me this smoking deal on it, like a super good deal. So I had this financial guy, he was in helping me, and our shop was always busy. You know, I mean, 2, 3, 4 week backlog. I could never find enough mechanics to fill the place. You know, and there's 40 trucks in the parking lot. You know the normal chaos. Actually, you have more chaos than that, but and we were busy, and I probably personally did a bad job not finding the person to manage that for me. Whether I found him and didn't do a good job training him, or I just never found him. Long story short, I ended up in the shop a lot because I would hear of things going on and be like, what? And I'd go out there and I'd be like, no, look, you don't need a PCM in this truck. You know, that truck doesn't need a high pressure oil pump. So I'm getting ready to buy this building, and I had this accountant guy, CPA guy in, and he's there for like a week because we had to get all this financial shit together for the bank and all this stuff. And so finally one day, it was like a Friday, and it was just fucking chaos all day. And he finally catches me for a minute. He's like, hey, I just want to talk to you a minute. I'm like, okay. And he says, I know you want to buy this building, and it is a nice building, and this is a good deal. But why are you doing this shop work? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, we're busy. We're crazy busy. And he's like, yeah, but look at this. He goes, the shop is 20% of your income and all your expenses. Like, you could just be in your office and you'd get rid of almost all your expenses and keep 80% of your income. Because what you're doing is not the shop work. You're doing online sales and sales over the phone. What are you doing? And I'm like, oh, shut up. We have to have a shop. You know, like this thing.
Right.
And then like it was a Friday. And then over the weekend, I'm like, is he right? so then I just start looking at it. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
Right.
The fuck? And it's weird because I feel super weird about not having shop and shop work, because it feels like it kind of delegitimizes you a little bit, or a lot. But I've had two of the best years of my life, physically and emotionally, that I've had in forever. Like, all the stress is gone. All, like, I'm just happy now. Like, whatever,
Right.
you know. And everything's good. You know, it's such a weird. And like I was saying, you grow and grow and grow, and you're not really paying attention, and it seems like growth is the only thing that matters sometimes. And then when you step back and look at it, you're like, oh, I'm really fucking this up. And
Yep.
you know, it's just everything's tough. It's all perspective, I guess.
It is. It really is. And that was the hardest thing for me coming from a shop to alligator. I felt like what you just said. I felt delegitimized. I'm like, man, we don't even touch wrenches. Like, what are we?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And then, but I had so much fun with it because it was, you know, in my head, I was still doing the shop work. Like, I'm sitting there talking to this guy about a set of ARP head studs for his 5.9, and he's like, what do I need to install it? I'm like, well, you need a good machine shop. You need to pull the head off, deck the head flat. You know, you're gonna have to grind the rocker box back here and just use your thumb as the guide. And if you can stick your whole thumbnail in there, it'll fit, you know, and then torque everything down to this and then back it off and torque this down. And, you know, I was still doing the work in my head every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never forgot any of it. I will say in the last 3 years here, I've become so separated from the shop because our phones are so busy now that I can't get out there to work anymore. And I'm starting to forget things. Like, I'm starting to forget what size socket went on this and what size socket. And I didn't think I would ever forget that. But when you stop doing it and you stop talking about it as much, it is weird to realize that you start losing some of that. But
Well,
I mean, I used to change a VP44 pump out, pump in, running 45 minutes. I would race myself.
Yep.
You know, and my comebacks were 0. I don't think I could change a VP44 out in 4 hours, and I think book time on it's 2.3.
Well, so what's funny about that is my daily driver, I have this old 0460, 330,000 miles on it.
Hell yeah!
I bought that truck for $5,000 in 2008. They thought the motor was blown up and it had a bad EGR cooler. So I picked that truck up in 2008 for $5,000. I still have it, and it's a good old truck. But this past weekend, I had to the ICP fucked up and the oil cooler was getting plugged up. So it's one of those ones, and it had a bad injector. So I'm just like, fuck it. I'm just going to do it and just get it done. Now, I know, because I was always, probably like you, one of those guys that you looked at book time and you're like, 3 hours to change an injector? Fuck. I can do that in 45 minutes. And
exactly.
I spent 2 fucking days pulling the turbo off, changing the injector, and my hands are bad, so I have to keep stopping and go get a drink and piddle fuck around. But I'm like, I used to be able to pull a turbo off in like 20 minutes on one of these fucking things, and now you know, it's just crazy when you're not doing it every single day. There's some skills, and then the other thing I realized is being a mechanic is some weird form of yoga. Like, you twist and bend and hold yourself in a position. Like, I'm pouring sweat and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, but you're constantly holding yourself, and I think it's like almost yoga.
It is. It literally is. No, it is weird. It's the weird thing for me is it's like I'm almost 40 and I'm like, man, like, am I gonna do this the rest of my life? Is this where I'm gonna be? You know, at 60 years old, still slinging parts on the phone? Like, that's a weird thing to think about.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you start thinking that when you're like 20, it seems like life is almost endless. And then when you get into the 40s and 50s, I think you have to fucking do some quick math and go, oh shit, this is like half over.
Yeah.
If I'm fucking lucky, I get another 40 years, you know, and the last 10 look like shit. Like,
right.
You know, so you start to look at things a little differently. Like, maybe I'll sleep in a little today and enjoy it more, you know, and I don't know.
I'm there. I mean, I've done the 10, 12, 16-hour days at the shop, and it's like I look back, I'm like, it didn't do me any good. I didn't make any more money. I didn't.
No.
You know.
Well,
I missed my kids football games. I missed my kids' karate. I missed my kids' dance. I missed this. I missed that.
Yep.
So I have realized that. I realized that about 3 years ago when my youngest daughter, she was like, "Dad, do you not like us?" And I was like, "Well, what?" And she's like, "Well, it seems like you always have an excuse to why not to come to my volleyball games or why
Oh
not to come to
man.
this." And man, that'll mess you up. I'm not a real emotional person, but it made me feel like a douchebag.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've never been the 9 to 5er, but I'm a 9 to 5er now. And if there's not something family oriented going on, I try to take the kids down in the wood shop and teach them something, teach them a
Mm-hmm.
skill, spend some one-on-one time with them. And I
Well,
think that's been a good decision. Financially, we're still doing just as good as we were before when I was killing myself in the shop
yep.
10, 11, 12 hours a day. So,
Well,
it's hard to back off, especially if you're a workaholic, and I am a hopeless workaholic.
mm-hmm. Well, what's funny for me, I feel like the pandemic, the shutdown shit up here was maybe the best thing for me ever. And I hate to say that because I know it really sucked for a lot of people. But
I enjoyed your daily camp out, building porches, posts.
fucking
Like I felt like I was there. I'm like, yeah, crack open a natty light for me, dog.
well, so we moved, and moving is the worst fucking thing in the world. When you move a business, I would fucking rather cut my dick off than move again. Like, it is just, everything's fucked. Like, you still have to do your regular work. Like, you still have to
Yep.
somehow figure it out, but you're just moving shit constantly, and nothing's where you think it is, and you lose stuff, and it's just a pain in the ass. So we moved back into my original shop, which I own. Don't have to pay a lease on, nothing. It's mine. And we're finally, after a whole year, so we moved in 2018 back to the shop towards the end of 2018. 2019 is kind of sorting everything out. And finally, right towards the end of 2019, I'm like, okay, everything's settled. We're good. I can just not be all stressed out and everything's good. And then this bullshit happens. And I kind of just threw my hands up in the air, like, fucking really? Like, really? Like, the fuck? And at first you're like, oh, we're all going to die.
Shopping online now.
Well, at first we're like, we're all going to fucking die. I just did all this work and I work 7 days a week, and now we're all going to get the fucking flu and die or whatever. And then, a week later you're like, okay, we're not going to die. And then we were supposed to be closed here, like in Pennsylvania, that, they locked us right down. We weren't supposed to go to work or anything. So my goal through the past few years is to make everything so I can work from anywhere. Like, I don't have to go to a physical place to work. I can just, as long as I have my laptop and some signal, I can work. Yeah. And so I was already kind of set up for that. So I'm just like, well, fuck it. I'll just work from home, and it is what it is. And I'll go up and check on the shop every once in a while, make sure the heater's on and shit like that. And I realized, I started paying attention. I'm like, well, we don't really get calls before 9 o'clock or that many. And, by the end of the day, I have them all covered no matter what. Like, no matter if I had something going on in the morning, if I had a doctor's appointment, and instead of being at the shop at 7, I didn't get there till 10, I still get the same amount of work done that day somehow. So I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to just not open my laptop till 9 o'clock. And then we went through the summer, and then when school started back up, I'm still on the same schedule. I'm like, fuck it. I'm going in at 9. I used to be like the 7 day a week, fucking every day get up 7 in the morning. You have to be on your way to work. And this year I'm just like, with the beginning of it, like everything what you were saying before about when the stock market crashed, you could have done everything perfectly in your business for the past 3, 5, 10, 20 years. And this year fucked you up, and it was completely out of your control. The whole COVID stuff, everybody shut it down. So I kind of threw my hands up in the air, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, fuck it. I'm just going to work like a normal person. I go home and enjoy my kid. I see her off to school every morning. I don't go until 9, and we get the same amount of work done somehow. Yep. It gets done. And at the end of the day, I tap out and go home,
Yeah. Yeah. And what I do, what I used to do is sit there until the last phone call. And then I would sit there for another half hour because there might be one more.
Right.
Now I leave at 4. I come in at 7, and look, there's 3 voicemails from when I left at 4, and the phone's not going to start ringing till 9. So I can get all my emails knocked out.
Yep.
Give these 3 people a chance to wake up and have their coffee, call them at 8, wrap those 3 up, 9 o'clock, the phone start ringing, and I'm getting, like you said, I'm getting the same amount done in exactly 8 hours as I was getting done in 10 or 12 or whatever.
Yep.
But
better way to live, man. Better way to live. Well, buddy, we've gone almost an hour and a half, and
look at us go.
I know, it's amazing. We should do this again sometime.
I'm totally down.
All
There's
right,
so many more things to talk about.
I know. You know what? Honestly, tonight, I didn't think we would talk about diesel stuff. I don't know why. I thought we would I don't know what we would talk about, but I wasn't expecting to talk this much about diesel stuff, but I'm glad we did. It was good. It was all good.
The first time Patrick invited me to be on his podcast, we did not talk about one diesel thing. We talked about elk hunting in Montana for 49 minutes.
Good. What's weird is I have tried to do podcasts. I tried to do a diesel oriented podcast. Like the first one I ever tried to do was like in 2010. And emotionally, I am fucking drained at the end of the day about talking about diesels. So I would like get somebody to call in and I'm like, I don't want to fucking talk about this. And nobody really understood what it was. They thought it was just a business thing. So everybody's like, our new products are coming out and it's going to be really good. And we'll have 7 new SKUs of this. And you're like, oh.
Oh my God, I'm sitting at a table on the Premier Cruise.
Yes. No, I don't want a sales pitch. I want to talk about shit. But,
well, and that's the thing. I thought I didn't plan on talking about diesels tonight either, but it's not every day that you get to talk to like an OG veteran in the diesel game, and that's kind of what we are, unfortunately.
It's weird. And
it's weird. And so it was fun to relive the beginning and, you know, kind of skip over the middle, and here we are, not at the end, but we've learned so much, and like the stuff that we used to think is so important is not important.
So have you seen the movie Ford versus Ferrari?
Yes.
Dude,
excellent movie.
How much did that whole movie feel like everybody's business? Like,
oh yeah,
complete clusterfuck. The Ford guy's here to call our fucking bill. I don't know how the fuck I'm going to do this. Like I love that movie. It was one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. To see an iconic person like Carroll Shelby ate shit for several years before he just happened to get Ford, and then off he goes. You know what I mean? It was just dumb luck.
He was like us in the sense that he was like this idiot savant. Like he was so focused on racing, but that was never what was going to be profitable as a business. It's what made his mark, you know, it's what put him on the map, but that's never what made Carroll Shelby's business successful. Their business, what made them successful was taking a cookie cutter car and slapping some bolt-ons on it.
Yep.
But he had to get through that first few years of ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly to develop the bolt-on parts. And that's what is kind of uplifting about it. It's like, man, you know, I know we're eating crow right now, but if this takes off,
right.
And it's always that gamble, it's always that but, you know.
And then at the end of the day, it seems like it would be better to eat shit as Carroll Shelby than to be putting like shit together at a factory or something and hating your life every day. You know what I mean?
Oh, I can imagine. I'll never be that guy. I'll never be the guy to sit on a production line and stamp out, you know, a Lego piece. I got to be in it. I love problem solving. That's my number one thing. My very first boss I ever had as a kid, you know, I went to him, I was like 11 years old, and the stupid string kept coming off the weed eater. And I was like, this stupid thing won't keep string on. He's like, don't come to me with problems, dude. He's like, there's no problems in this world. There's only resolutions and results. Like, come to me with the fix and I'll listen to you. I'm not going to sit here and listen to you whimper about the string coming off. Figure out why it's coming off. Don't bug me about it. So, and he's just this rough, gruff old cowboy in Montana. And that was like my number one life lesson. That's what's made my life. That's what's made me successful. And is that takeaway is there are no such thing as problems. There's only solutions.
And this is one of the best things that I ever read. I read some fucking book somewhere. And that basically one time I had a meeting when we had a whole bunch of employees and they're driving me fucking crazy. And it's part of my own problem because, I could do all the things. So whatever the thing was in the business, whether it was the accounting thing or the social media thing or turning the wrenches or talking to the customers or whatever the fuck, I knew about it. But maybe I didn't know as much about it as I should, but I knew enough about it that I knew more than anybody else I hired.
Yep.
And they're coming to me and they're driving me fucking crazy. Just up a wall. Just nonstop questions all day. So finally I sat them all down and I'm like, okay, look, I don't mean this in a very mean way at all, but you guys, if you're coming to me with a problem, I also want you to come to me with 3 solutions you wrote down. And they're like, what? I'm like, no, seriously. If you have a problem and you're like, I need to go ask John about this, I want you to sit down. I want you to take 10 minutes, half hour if you have to, and write the 3 solutions to the problem that you can see. And if one of them seems like the thing that I'm going to tell you to do, just fucking do it.
Yeah, skip coming to me and do it.
Right. Because they would write down 3 solutions and they'd be like, well, John would obviously tell us to do this. Well, then fucking do it. But it finally released them to go, all right, well, this is probably what he's going to do anyways. And occasionally I'd come in and be like, what the fuck are you doing? And they'd show me their 3 solutions. And I'd be like, oh yeah, that was the best. Yep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but that is managing. That's what you're supposed to do as a business owner or business manager or whatever. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to hold people's hands and make them feel worthless and talk down to them. You're supposed to make them think and manage their time properly. And that's, that's what that old man did for me when I was 11. You know, he made me feel like a dumbass and I never wanted to talk to him again.
And here you are.
Right?
Well, hey, buddy.
Awesome, John. Well, you guys have a good night.
Good to
I'm
talk
going
to
to
you.
sneak in and grab some dinner and pour a bourbon.
All right, brother. We'll do this again.
Take care, man.
Yeah. See you, bud.
Yeah.
Bye.